Let's talk about anxiety. Hey guys, my name is Amanda, also known as Amateur Aries, and today we are talking about anxiety, what I've gone through with it, how I've gotten it, how I've handled it, what I went through, and the such. If I'm looking off to the side, it's because I did write down 4 pages of notes that I wanted to make sure I, touched upon. Now, if I'm reading from them exactly, it's because I really want to make sure that I get this topic out the way I wanted it down and to speak about, and I wrote it down exactly how I wanted to speak about it. Plus, with my anxiety, as you will hear through the story, it went on a time period of like 4 months. So there are a lot of things that happened during those months that I went through, experienced, what I helped me go through it, etc. So I just want to make sure I go in order, so I'm not going back and forth. So if I'm looking off to the side, it is just because I'm making sure I'm not forgetting a lick of information. I wasn't born with anxiety. I am schizoaffective. So I have schizoaffective disorder, which is schizophrenia with a mood disorder, whether it's bipolar or borderline. My psychiatrist isn't quite sure which one it is or if it's both yet. So I am diagnosed with a disorder or a couple of disorders. But I was never diagnosed with anxiety my entire life. Either I've been to a psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist. I've never been diagnosed with anxiety. However, back in, I believe, August, I can't remember if it was August or if it was September, I had almost fainted in my car while driving my mom and Zach to Walmart. And I didn't faint, I almost fainted. I started getting lightheaded, I got really hot, I started sweating, and it was like I had the air blowing on me and everything like that, but I was losing air and everything was moving back and forth. Sorry, this is kind of bringing out my anxiety right now, but I really want to talk about it. I got to Walmart, I was able to pull over, took a breather for about 10 minutes, and then I went to Walmart, dropped off Zach for work, and I took my mother grocery shopping. And I learned afterwards, because I had to sit down because I started having these spells, and I will get to what I'm talking about in a second. Like, I started freaking out, started panicking out of nowhere. I was just tweaking out. And I sat down to catch myself, and Zach, who is my husband, was there trying to comfort me while he was working, because he works at Walmart. He was keeping an eye on me, and eventually I had to call my father to come pick me up and my mother up. And I said to him, I was like, I think I need to go to a hospital, because my legs all of a sudden got really weak and wobbly, like I couldn't stand. I needed him to go get a cart, those rideable carts. And we went to a emergency clinic instead of a hospital, and I learned that I have hypoglycemia. Now, for those who do not know my health, I do have some health problems. I have IBS, and I have a heart murmur, and asthma. I also have asthma. Can't forget that one. That one causes some serious problems for me. But my husband does have hypoglycemia, and so does my father. And so I'm surrounded by people who have this issue. But to learn that I had it kind of spooked me a little bit, because that was the first spell I've ever had with hypoglycemia. Normally I'm always well fed, I always taken the right proper foods, but during that time period when that spell happened, I did go through a weird transition of my medications. I was taking Abilify, a 5 milligram Abilify, which is not a lot, and I was taking 100 milligrams of lamotrigine, which is my mood stabilizer, which has been a blessing to me. I have not been depressed or anything like that, but that's for another video if you want to hear about it. I was up on the Abilify for about a month, and I originally was taking 2 milligrams, and the 2 milligrams was a blessing for me. Like, I was getting up early, I was filming videos like almost every single day, I was able to schedule them up, so that's why I had videos up for a long time during this anxiety spell, which I'm about to tell you about. So what ended up happening, which I think happened, is the new medication probably messed with my body a little bit, along with not having ate that morning after like an hour. Just kind of made my spell worse than it needed to do. So when you have a hypoglycemic spell, when you have episodes, it means you have low blood sugar, and it can drop you. And if it drops to a point, you can actually faint. Other points could be just you get really jittery, you start really getting really hungry, and you get really moody, and you get fatigued. But for some reason, we went home that day, and I was fine. I was really tired. That's what happens after such a drop of a low blood sugar, is you get really tired for the rest of the day. We went home. I rested. I slept for like the entire day, and that's what was normal for me at that time with Abilify 5 milligrams. I was sleeping for majority of the day anyways. And I was starting to feel weird. Like, I wasn't having any more panic attacks, but I was feeling weird about it. Like, something wasn't right with me. I was a changed woman all of a sudden. And I'm about to get into that again. I'm skipping parts. I'm not even reading my notes. I should probably pay more attention to that. So before we get to the next day, I'm going to say this. I have always prided myself as a tough, strong woman. I've gone through seeing things, hearing things, extreme suicidal tendencies, I've gone through trauma. I've gone through a lot of things that normally would spook a normal person, but that is normal for my disorders. And I've always faced my episodes head on. Like, whenever I saw hallucination, I didn't run back in fear, I faced them. I've always been a fighter, a warrior. If I saw something coming at me, I stood my ground, I growled at it, although, you know, why would I growl at it? I don't know. And I always confronted it head on. And of course, in the blink of an eye, it would go away from me. But I've always prided that about myself. I was always very strong about these situations. So after this day that I had that spell, something twisted in me, like, completely. The next day, I was all of a sudden afraid of everything. I was afraid of eating. I was afraid of drinking. I was afraid of showering. I was afraid of driving. I was afraid to leave my bedroom. Now, this has never happened to me before, but we learned when we looked up the symptoms that it was an anxiety spell, and it was impactful. I was having anxiety panic attacks. I was freaking out. I was having the heart pounds. I was always on edge. Every single pain that I had encountered, I had thought was going to kill me. If I had a slight pain in my left arm, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. If I had a slight pain in my right arm, I thought I was going to have a stroke. If I had a pain in my head, for some reason, I thought I had brain cancer. It was just like, why are you thinking these thoughts? And I couldn't think like that when these were happening. I thought that was going to happen, and I believed it. And that's called impending doom. It's part of the anxiety. And I didn't know that until my mom looked it up. And this continued happening to me very strongly for the next 4 days. It was probably longer. It was on a Wednesday, because we always go grocery shopping on Wednesdays. The anxiety started on Thursday. And then by Saturday, I decided I should probably call my psychiatrist, because this is crazy. I was literally afraid of everything. I couldn't drive Zach to work. I had to tell my father to start driving him to work. I was shaking. I was crying all the time. And this is not normal for me. This was so not normal for me. My parents were thinking about taking me into inpatient care. And they would ask me, how do they even do that? Because they never thought about doing that for me. Regardless that I've had hallucinations and voices in my head, I've always kind of hid that to myself. I never did that around my parents, but I've always had a problem with hiding it from the people I'm closest to, which were like my girlfriends or my boyfriends. But with my parents, I've always kept things like that away from, because I was never personally close to my parents like that. I was always personally close to my boyfriends and girlfriends like that. I don't know why, I just have always been that way. So they were starting to get so worried for me that I needed to be taken to a hospital, because they didn't know what was happening to their little girl anymore. I was a completely different person. My husband was starting to get really scared for me, because the person he married isn't the person who's acting like this. This is not her. Well, anyway, I couldn't call my psychiatrist on Saturday. I had to wait until Monday. But I was noticing at night, when I take my medications, which was still at the time Abilify and lamotrigine, after I took the lamotrigine, it kind of like subdued a little bit, like in the tiniest bit. It just like calmed down. I would still have minor panic attacks, but it would happen for like 5 seconds, and then it would calm down, and then like maybe 10 minutes later, and then it would calm down. But by then I was slowly already falling asleep, so it was like I would wake up slightly, and then I would knock out, and then I wouldn't feel it for the rest of the night. So I called her on Monday, in tears because I just opening up to someone about this, which was the receptionist, because they answered the phone. I was like, I don't know what's happening. I had this spell on Wednesday. Suddenly I'm a completely different person. I keep having anxiety spells and I keep on having panic attacks and I'm scared and I keep thinking these thoughts, and I was scared. I was literally looking at my family like I'm not going to be able to spend the rest of my life with them, because for some reason I thought I was dying. And it was awful. Really, I lost, in that week, I lost 10 pounds. I shredded it off because I wasn't eating. And whenever I tried to eat, I was gagging it back up. Not intentionally, it was just coming back up like kind of thing. And the only thing I was able to drink, I think it was, I don't even know what I was drinking back then. I don't even know if I was drinking water. I don't even think I was drinking anything back then. I shredded a lot of weight. And 10 pounds in a week is pretty fast for someone who's not even trying to like work out or anything. I just shredded it because I wasn't eating, which isn't good. I wouldn't advise that. So they had her call me back because it was an emergency. I was having a panic attack, and instead of calling 911, they thankfully called my psychiatrist and had her call me back. And I told her that, okay, before I continue, I almost forgot something. That's why I should be looking at the papers. The previous Friday after the spell, I did go to my psychiatrist appointment. And I was having a panic attacks because I had to drive there. I was freaking out the entire way there. I don't know how I even got there that day. But because of that, when I was freaking out, I was crying in the car and crying there when I got there. Mind you, a psychiatrist 30 minutes away. There was a lot of crying. Zach had to hold my hand while I was driving. It was... Either way, she prescribed me. That's on it. I'm trying to pull it up so I know I get it right. Is it this one? No, it's not. It's this one. Of course that happened. She prescribed me Buspirone, what she called Buspar. Buspirone. 15 milligrams tablets. And she told me to take half of it because it's like as needed. She said that when you have a panic attack, you take it as needed and it should cool you down. So she prescribed me. I'm trying to make sure I cover the addresses at least. I don't know if you guys can see that. Buspirone. She prescribed it to me and I took it over the weekend until Monday. And I noticed that it wasn't working. My anxiety was getting way worse. Well, it wasn't worse. It was just the same. And I was so tired of being scared of everything, so tired of not eating, that I did call her on Monday. I can't believe I forgot about the Buspirone. And it's still, she told me on Monday to stop taking it. So there's still lots of pills in there. I don't like to take the pills out just in case I get changed psychiatrists. I should take the pills out, but I keep the bottles just in case I get switched psychiatrists. You have the medication that you used to take. So she told me, after I told her that it wasn't working, I'm freaking out, I keep crying, I'm not eating, I'm afraid of showering, I'm just afraid of everything, and I can't even drive my husband to work. And I'm sorry, there's hair all over my face. She said, well, what is working for you? I said, well, the lamotrigine at night is the only thing that seems to be calming me down even in the slightest bit. She said, okay, we need to double that. So the next day I started taking 200 milligrams of lamotrigine. Mind you, 100 milligrams of lamotrigine was working for me. Again, that's a whole nother story if you want me to talk about medications. So she prescribed me 200 milligrams of lamotrigine and it was working. Like, all of a sudden, I was at least able to eat. Like, it wasn't all gone. Don't get me wrong. It didn't fix me. It didn't fix me in the least bit. But I was able to eat again. I was able to get through the day without crying as much. But she kept me on this for another, I think it was up until that Friday. She said she would call me back on that Friday. She said just to continue taking this, maybe we'll diet down still. You probably just need a couple of days. Probably work during the day, so take it in the morning. And I continued taking it, but for 3 days I continued taking it. I'll tell you the truth. I didn't take it for the whole week. And I noticed it wasn't helping. But when I skipped a day off of it and I took the 200 milligrams of the lamotrigine, I was not freaking out that day. Like, I wasn't like not anxious, I wasn't crying, and I wasn't having as severe panic attacks. So I said, I'm not taking this anymore, and I threw it all to the side. And I told her that day too, when she called me back on Friday, because she called me as an emergency backup to make sure that I was still okay. I told her it wasn't working, but when I stopped taking it for like a day, I was fine off the just on the Lamotrigine. She said, okay. So that happened. I still wasn't able to drive. That was the only thing I wasn't able to do. It took me several weeks, but I was able to eat again. I was able to drink again. I was able to shower again, and I wasn't able to really do anything else. I couldn't leave the house. I had a hard time going down to my mailbox. I had a hard time going down the steps to my driveway. But every night after I started going on the 200 milligrams, my husband, who is also my caretaker, not like professionally, he's not in the law to do it, but he does it because he's my husband. But he does like learn about the stuff you're supposed to do as a caretaker to do it in the future. He took me out every single night, helped me down the stairs, and we have a hoop over there, and he made sure that I was doing something active. And so every night for about a week we were playing basketball with each other, whether it was after work or before work, or even when he was at work, he said go out and play a little bit basketball. I'd never been a fan of basketball. I'm not saying I am now, but he was encouraging me to be active, because when you're in a state of inactivity and you're letting anxiety and panic attacks eat at you, that becomes your world. That devours you. That literally it takes you apart. It makes you numb to everything. It makes you scared of everything. So he knew I needed to go out and do something no matter what. If I was scared to do it, I needed to still try to. I needed to take the steps. So he was extremely great at that. And I have to admit, we were having problems before this episode happened. We were having problems. And then when this episode happened, it made me see him in a completely new light. Like, he is here for me in my most desperate times. And he did change completely after that. He became so caring and so attentive. Like, he was finally like on point, making sure I was okay. I don't know if maybe just seeing his wife turn like that made him like, okay, something's wrong, I have to change now, like become a bigger man. But he did. He became a bigger man. He really took it head on. I'm not gonna say every man's gonna do that, girls, so don't go and take my word for that, but he did. And I just had a newfound love for him. Like, I respected him. I respect him so much more now. And our relationship has been great ever since. Like, I don't fight with him or anything. We don't do anything. We do have our small spurts when my episodes do skip by my vacation, but we've been doing great. So, I was getting better throughout the weeks. And finally, after about a month, I decided I can't keep letting this keep me from driving. Side note about me, I started driving when I was 15, and I was the happiest person in the world to earn my driver's license, because I was finally able to go out into the world and do what I wanted to do. I've always been an independent woman. I like to go out to Books A Million and read books and hang out with friends and stuff like that. So having that taken away from me made me feel like my freedom was torn from me. It was so horrible. I felt so bad. Like, why am I scared? I got scared of going in my car, sitting in my car. But I started to force myself to do it. I fought the anxiety so hard. I literally would, on occasion, I would like, just go sit in the car for 10 minutes. And I would sit in there, I would sit in the car holding the wheel, and I'd be like, and then 2 days later, I'm like, okay, I can drive down to my mailbox. Now, my mailbox is not like, it's not like a normal driveway where the mailbox is like right down the driveway, which is like at the most 20 feet. I don't know. I don't know what driveway is fully. Mine is down to the main road because we live on like on top of a hill. So I would drive down to my mailbox, and I wasn't having anxiety attacks when I was doing that. So I was like, okay, do this for a couple more days, and then we'll drive to Home Depot, which is less than 5 minutes away from me. It's like down the street. And I'll drive around the parking lot, and I'll drive back, because it was the opposite way of where I went and had my episode. So I was trying to at least get back to riding or driving, and then eventually I would take the way that I had this spell, which I was afraid it would become a post-traumatic, episode where if I would sit at that light, I would have an episode, which I'll get to soon. So, next few days, I did that. I was like, oh my god, I'm doing this. I got this. My dad's a very impatient person, and he doesn't believe in disorders very much. He doesn't believe in something that he can't see or touch. So, he was getting tired of driving Zach to work and picking him up. He eventually said, you gotta get yourself straight, which was hurtful to me because I didn't know what was going on with me. I couldn't control it, and it's not something I want, and it's not something I want you to do for me. I'm an independent woman. Having you pick up my husband every single day makes me feel like an awful person. I know he's being helpful, but I feel like an awful person because it's something I was happy to do. And I said to him finally one day, I was like, how about when you go pick him up tonight, I'll go with you. And I'm afraid of my dad's driving. He's a weird driver. He doesn't get into car accidents often, but it's still like I get scared of it. So I got very scared of when we were driving together, when he was driving. I was like, I think I can do this. So the next day I said, I think I can do this if you're in the car with me. So he actually got in the car with me and we drove to Zach's work, and it was at night. He worked a lot of 1 to 10 shifts. My dad actually continued talking to me throughout the entire process, and I was having panic attacks, but they were not as bad as that first day when I went to see my psychiatrist on that Friday. I think it was because it was nighttime, and nighttime was a different scenario, a different scene. When I did get to that light where I fainted, which I didn't faint, it was at a light that had occurred, so I did start having a freak out. I'm like, oh my god, this is the light that happened. And I almost freaked out, and we drove by through it. And I got there, and I had him continue driving with me at night for 3 more days. And then I was finally able to do it myself. And I was so happy, but I was still freaking the frick out. So I did something different. I was like, I gotta figure out a way to distract this brain from thinking those thoughts while I'm driving, because those thoughts can lead you into an accident. Well, when we moved here to Georgia from Florida, I had bought one of those DVD players you put in the cars, usually for the kids in the back. But we used it to help distract us on the way to the drive, because it was a 9-hour drive from where we used to live to here. So we used to play Game of Thrones in the background. I never paid attention to it because I know Game of Thrones enough to hear it and know the scenes with my head. But Zach would watch it because he has ADD and he gets really impatient very quickly, so I had to have something on for him. But we kept the DVD player in the car shut all the time. We just never used it for the entire 2 years, up until now. So what I did was I took Big Bang Theory. I took something funny, and I put it in the DVD player, and this is one of the ones that closes. So I would close it to where it's just a slight light, but you can't see it, but you can still hear the sounds. And I listened to that all the way to his work, and it worked like a spell. I didn't have nearly as bad panic attacks. I was like, I might have a faint one, like, oh my god. And I would breathe, and it would go away. And it worked. I've never had something work so much better than that. So my next situation was driving during the day when it had happened, which was at that time 12:40 p.m. It would be p.m. Yes, it was afternoon that it occurred. So I was terrified of driving by myself at daytime because I was afraid of a PTSD episode, because I used to get them occasionally for other things, usually from voices and stuff like that. So I told my mom to come with me. So she would come with me, and 2 days later, I was finally able to drive by myself. Now, during the day, I had a lot more panic attacks than I did at night. I was no problem with driving at night, freaking out during the day. It was bad. And at that time, I didn't know other routes to get to his work, but now I do. I know different routes. And whenever I take the different routes, I don't have a single faint part in my heart. I still don't now, but we're getting to that. Sorry, this video is going to be long, but it's important for those who want to learn how to overcome their anxiety. And for those who are interested in how I overcame it. Okay, so after a month passes, it took about 4 weeks for me to get back in the car. And shortly after, I went to my psychiatrist, and she put me on new medication. And this is why I'm bringing this medication up, by the way. So she put me on sertraline, which is a generic version of Zoloft. Here's the pillbox. And I got on Friday because I used to get Friday appointments. Yes, because now she does it on Tuesday. I got it on Friday. And I took it for 2 days. The first day, I woke up in the middle of the night thinking I couldn't breathe. I literally started having panic attacks about I couldn't breathe. I had to like force myself to breathe. Like I felt like I had to manually breathe, and I was freaking out. I was so freaking out. Like I was back to the anxiety I had those first few days. I was like, oh my god. Oh my god. I had to force Zach awake, and I told him, like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. He's like, you're talking, you're breathing right now. I'm like, I know, but I have to manually. I was crying, I was freaking out. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And he's like, it's okay, I'm right here. And we turned on something funny to watch because I noticed that comedy seems to help get me out of it a little bit. It was so scary, and let me tell you, you guys are probably thinking, it's like, calm down. You're not freaking out. You don't need to freak out. When you're in those states of mind, you don't have control over your thoughts. You literally think it's happened. You think that's reality. I thought I couldn't breathe unless I manually pushed down my lungs. I 100% believed that, and it took me until 7 o'clock that morning before I knocked back out. It was so bad. And let me tell you, what's worse about it is this stuff knocks you out. So when I woke up, I was so groggy that I couldn't focus on anything. So when I was forcing myself to breathe and I was falling back to sleep, I would wake up to another intense panic attack thinking I was dying because I thought I would stop breathing. And oh my god, it was so terrible. And it was so terrible the next day when I had to take Zach to work. I was ball out crying. Like, I can't drive, because my anxiety came back. I was crying so hard I almost vomited 5 times in a row. And I didn't vomit. I was gagging so badly that it was... Either way, Zach had to call off that day because I couldn't do it. My dad already had left for work. And that made me feel worse. Like, I thought I had gotten over this mess. So why am I having a problem now? So I'm going to cut this video, and I'm going to finish it with a second part to my anxiety episode. So I hope that you watch it. If you like to see more on how I got to the end, then keep watching.